HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents Teaching Life Skills to Children and Teens with ADHD, a guide for parents and counselors, by Vincent J. Monastra, Ph.D., read by Asa Siegel. Publisher's note: please have a journal or note-taking device available while listening to this audiobook. The print and ebook editions of this book include additional worksheet examples. Introduction. I'll never forget the moment when I first became a dad. The feeling of sheer terror that my son would not survive childbirth was quickly replaced with the amazement of being part of creating a new life. The next couple of days at home for me were just a blur of final preparations. Then came the real moment of departure, bringing my son home from the hospital. 3-day-old Reuben was all cuddled in, not a care in the world, and about 5 minutes into the ride home with me and his mother, reality hit me. No more nurses showing me how to feed him. No one who could translate baby cries into, "I'm hungry, I need a burp, I'm cold, I need a hug, I'm tired," or "I'm wet and poopy." I thought, what in the world do I do with this little guy? Of course, instinct kicked in, and I eventually learned how to give my little guy what he needed. Even though those first few weeks and months are exhausting, most babies handle entry into the world just fine, and so do we. We're reassured when they seem comfortable and content and figure out pretty quickly what they need when they start to fuss. We take a bazillion pictures to document every moment in their physical development and settle into our various versions of family life. Time goes by, and before we know it, our babies are heading off to nursery school or preschool. All of a sudden, their little prince and princess habits need to be toned down a bit. Those temper tantrums they throw at home to get their way start to show up at school. Their tendencies to ignore mom and dad's directions don't disappear when they show up at Future Leaders of America Nursery School. Their inability to share becomes a focus for concern. That high energy that they used to be able to wear out on their little trikes bubbles out all over the rug at circle time. Even more bewildering is the total change of rules when they transition from preschool to kindergarten. During their preschool years, they were encouraged for talking and playing with other little kids. Then they head into kindergarten, and it's no longer okay to do that in the classroom. Being a helper in my 2 youngest sons' kindergarten class was a real eye-opener. At times, I could feel frustration mounting and the tension in the air as I watched little boys and girls get corrected whenever their eyes were not on their own work, when they were talking with others, when they were touching anything but what was in front of them, and when they got out of their seats to visit with a buddy in their class. All of this was okay in preschool. Who changed the rules? For most kids, these are just momentary glitches. Parents and teachers are able to teach and encourage preschoolers and kindergarten students how to act in social situations. Most will learn within a few months how to handle this new world. They learn to pay attention when the teacher talks and follow directions in the classroom. They can focus on their work for the 10 or 15 minutes required and get most of it done. They learn how to make friends, figure out how to share, and handle those moments when they feel frustrated without saying mean things, biting, or hitting other kids. They experience small measures of success and newfound friendships. Life is pretty good. However, some children don't learn these lessons so easily. No matter how many times a parent or teacher says, "Look at me when I'm speaking," the child continues to look everywhere else. No matter how many times a parent or teacher tells a child to sit still, stay in line, use inside voices, or share, change just doesn't come. No matter how many times they tell a child to stop grabbing and pushing, they still find themselves pulling the child off of other kids. These children don't seem to understand words such as boundaries and personal space, and are constantly being corrected for being hyperactive and impulsive. For other children and teens, the issue isn't about being restless, impulsive, or overly active. Instead, the problem for these children is that they don't pay attention very well unless they are involved in doing something they like. These are the kids who can't remember to bring home their assignments, but can remind you that you promised to take them shopping a week ago, and give you the exact time, exact place, and your exact words. These are the kids who give up on practicing their spelling words or math problems in 30 seconds, but could play Minecraft, build with Lego bricks, watch TV, ride their bikes, or skate for hours. These are the kids who couldn't follow through on a simple instruction such as, "Please put away your dishes," but could give you detailed instructions about how to succeed on a video game or operate your smartphone, tablet, or other electronic device. About 5% of our children have a degree of inattention, impulsivity, or restlessness at home or school or both that doesn't ever seem to get much better because they have something called attention deficit/hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. Does your child have ADHD? If you are uncertain if your child has ADHD, take a couple of minutes to complete this checklist that provides the core symptoms of ADHD. For a child or a teenager to have ADHD, they need to show at least 6 symptoms of inattention and/or hyperactivity and impulsivity for at least 6 months. Here are the symptoms of ADHD as listed in the diagnostic manual used by physicians, psychologists, social workers, and other mental health counselors. Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, American Psychiatric Association, 2013. Check if the problem described is a cause of concern to you. Inattention. My child has problems paying close attention to details and makes careless mistakes in school tasks, work assignments, or other activities. Sustaining attention in tasks or play activities. Listening when spoken to directly. Organizing tasks and activities. Engaging in tasks that require sustained mental effort, like school or homework. With losing things that are necessary for tasks or activities. With distractibility. With forgetfulness. Number of symptoms of inattention. Hyperactivity/impulsivity. My child has problems controlling fidgeting with hands or feet, is squirmy. With leaving seat in the classroom or other situations in which remaining seated is expected. Controlling the urge to run about or climb excessively when it is inappropriate. Playing or engaging in leisure activities quietly. Controlling the urge to talk excessively. Controlling the urge to blurt out answers before questions have been completed. Waiting turn. Controlling the urge to interrupt or intrude on others. With restlessness. With excessive activity, is on the go or seems driven by a motor. Number of symptoms of hyperactivity/impulsivity. If your child has shown at least 6 symptoms of inattention, 6 symptoms of hyperactivity/impulsivity, or both for 6 months or longer, and these problems seem to be happening more often than they do in other kids their age, then there is reason for you to wonder about a possible diagnosis of ADHD. When did the symptoms begin? The next question to ask yourself is, when did these problems begin? Parents of a child or teen with ADHD will almost always recall that they started being concerned about their child's attention, impulsivity, or restlessness by the time the child was 12 years old. If symptoms began by that age, it is another indicator that the child has ADHD. Where are the symptoms occurring? Children and teens with ADHD won't have problems paying attention in just one situation. although children who are inattentive but not hyperactive may not be rated as having an unusual number of symptoms in all settings. It is rare for a child with ADHD to show some symptoms in only one place. The child who is having problems paying attention to instructions, following directions, or controlling behavior at home is also likely to be having similar problems at school, at an after-school activity, or at an evening dance, gymnastics, karate, scouting, or sports program. If your child is having some problems of inattention and/or impulsivity and hyperactivity in more than one setting, then you have another reason to wonder about a diagnosis of ADHD. Are the symptoms being caused by other medical or psychological problems? The next step for you would be to meet with your child's physician and to begin the process of medical and psychological evaluation to determine whether your child truly has ADHD. For example, at my clinic, nearly 33% of children have been found to have a vitamin D deficiency or insufficiency, which can cause symptoms of inattention and mood problems. Another 25% have learned that they have undiagnosed visual problems, e.g., visual tracking and convergence disorders, that make it difficult for a child to pay attention while reading, writing, and completing math problems. Even though the lessons in this text have helped children with and without ADHD, my experience is that unless the medical causes of a child's symptoms of inattention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity have been identified and treated, their ability to learn life skills will be hampered. So take the necessary steps to make sure that your child is accurately diagnosed and treated before beginning this program. Focus on skill development. Checklists listing symptoms of ADHD naturally focus on what's going wrong, which is helpful in figuring out if a child has a condition like ADHD. My perspective is that treatment for children and teens with ADHD needs to go beyond symptoms and focus on what skills we want our children to learn. To help you with this task, I've also included one other checklist that you might find helpful, whether you're raising a child with ADHD or are a counselor, healthcare provider, or educator interested in teaching life skills at your school, office, or clinic. The Functional Assessment Checklist Home version, at the end of this chapter, provides a way to help you get a comprehensive picture of the kinds of skills that a child may need to develop. After you've taught the lessons in this book, you can use the checklist again to get an idea of which lessons have been learned and which still need to be developed. Some parents, physicians, educators, and counselors find it helpful to determine a score indicating their child's level of functioning. To that end, I've included a copy of the Interpretation Guide for the Functional Assessment Checklist, home version, for you to use as well. Why I wrote this book. When I began my career as a clinical psychologist, I was asked to pitch in and try to help children and teens who had ADHD. I quickly realized that I didn't have much to offer. To be honest, most of what I had been taught simply did not work with kids who had ADHD. Even though I was uncertain how to best help these children, I was certain about one thing. These kids had grabbed my attention and my heart. It was true that many of these children would come into my clinic and either have nothing to say or have a lot to say about nothing that seemed important. And yes, these were the kids who couldn't remember to brush their teeth in the morning, but could remember what mom or dad promised 3 days ago. They were the kids who'd get uncontrollably furious over some disappointment, but get over it in 15 minutes, even though their parents couldn't. These were the kids who wanted to have friends, but hardly anyone wanted to hang out with them. At recess time, they just stayed by themselves or ran around in circles. No one invited them over for play dates. Rarely were they invited to birthday parties. Despite all these problems, I couldn't help but be drawn to the enthusiasm and talents of these kids. Even though they'd be bored out of their minds on the baseball field, they could do amazing tricks on their bikes or skateboards, become black belts at age 10, and amaze people with their dancing, dramatic, or musical ability. These were the kids who couldn't figure out their multiplication tables, but could build a replica of Captain America out of Lego pieces. These were the kids who struggled so hard not to become the child left behind in school, but ended up believing that they were just stupid and had no real future simply because they could not master advanced mathematics, figure out the meaning of some metaphor in an obscure poem, remember 2 semesters of historical trivia so that they could pass state examinations in global studies, or write a 3-page paper on The Catcher in the Rye. These kids were highly creative, intelligent, and talented, but simply didn't succeed at schoolwork. I became determined to help them find a way to develop the skills they needed to develop friendships, a sense of purpose, and confidence. During the past 20 years, I have dedicated myself to trying to understand what was going on physically with these children and teens. After all, how could children who could pay such great attention on some things be so unable to focus on schoolwork? I used a kind of brain scan, a quantitative electroencephalogram, or EEG, in my research, and learned a lot about the behavior of the brains of children of ADHD. As a psychologist, it was a great feeling to see so many parents express relief and excitement as they watched a brain scan provide information about the neurological symptoms of ADHD in their child. After evaluating thousands of children and teens, my model for the diagnosis and treatment of ADHD was published by the American Psychological Association in the book Unlocking the Potential of Patients with ADHD, a Model for Clinical Practice. What I learned during those decades was helpful in guiding certain parts of the treatment of my patients. However, I was left with the feeling that I had dedicated my time to helping kids improve their attention without ever focusing on what was really important for them to learn. At first, I worked with the parents of children at our clinic to try to figure out the kinds of parenting techniques that seemed to help teach and motivate children to learn new skills. This research proved quite productive and led to the publication of our award-winning parenting program, presented in the first 2 editions of my book, Parenting Children with ADHD, 10 Lessons That Medicine Cannot Teach. However, even though the parenting program helped at home, my patients still seemed to have a lot of social problems at school and other situations. So we took life instruction one step further, because my patients and their parents knew that many of their problems involved other people. We needed to find a way to teach and practice life skills with others. We recognized that even if children could learn how to have conversations with their parents, they still had to learn how to have conversations with kids their age. We realized that even if a child felt loved by his or her parents, there were other sources of confidence that involve experiences not all parents can provide. Most important, we were aware that many of the children avoided involvement in group activities. We feared the long-term results of this isolation and felt compelled to act. We knew that we needed to go beyond attention. What emerged over the next decade was a life skills program that could be taught in homes, schools, clinics, and ADHD support groups. In our program, groups of parents and children work together to establish friendships and a social network and to learn essential life skills. Because we recognized that learning any new skill requires ongoing practice, one of the key components of my clinic's program has been the establishment of communication networks between parents so that each child would have about 10 to 15 new friends with whom they could have fun and practice skills between classes. In the first meeting, kids and their parents share phone numbers and email addresses and arrange to get together between classes. One of the most fulfilling parts of my involvement in the program occurred when I had the chance to listen to kids describe what they had done with their new friends between classes. What's in this book? This book describes our clinic's life skills program and how you can develop essential life skills in children at home, at school, or in a support group for parents, grandparents, and other care providers of children and teens with ADHD. The book is set up so that you can get a feel for what it is like to be a part of a life skills class. Just like I do at my clinic, I start each chapter by talking about the problem we are taking on and the life skill that you'll be learning. Then there are exercises to teach, model, and practice these skills. At the end, there is a challenge activity related to the skill being taught in which kids and their parents or other care providers have fun competing for prizes. Like the program offered at my clinic, this book begins with a lesson on healthy diet, sleep, and exercise habits. That's because hungry, tired, and out-of-shape kids don't learn anything very well. The same is true for kids who have other kinds of medical problems that can cause attention problems, e.g., anemia, hypoglycemia, diabetes, thyroid disorders, and allergies, as well as deficiencies of vitamins D and B, calcium, zinc, and magnesium. For that reason, every child who participates in our life skills program has been screened for such medical problems before they begin our classes, and we emphasize healthy eating, sleeping, and exercise habits throughout the program. The next series of lessons focuses on building confidence. We concentrate on improving confidence through learning skills that matter to other kids, facing fears, developing friendships, and acting in a way that matches the child's moral code. We also teach children how to join social groups, engage others in conversation, and respond to peer rejection and teasing. The program also includes lessons on problem solving, organizational skills, and developing emotional sensitivity, i.e., showing appreciation, kindness, and generosity. Although teaching organizational skills would seem to be a lesson that some parents would like us to take on earlier in the program, I've found that the development of friendships with the other children in the group is enhanced by focusing on helping children team up to face fears, try out new activities, and practice conversational skills. For that reason, the lesson on organization follows those targeting confidence building. In this book, you will find practical strategies for teaching each of these life skills. You will also learn ways to make the lessons interesting and fun. One of the most fundamental lessons I've learned is that kids with ADHD will pay attention if what they are seeing and hearing comes across as important, interesting, or fun. So each lesson in this book contains two parts: a presentation of the lesson intended for parents, counselors, teachers, or other group leaders, and a worksheet to be used with the child or children participating in the group. How the Life Skills program works at my clinic. To help sustain interest and the attention of kids, I have found it helpful to divide each class into 4 parts. Initially, I encourage groups to have pizza or some other kind of easy finger food for a light snack. This reduces anxiety and sets the stage for practicing conversation skills in a common setting, i.e., while eating with peers. At our clinic, we set up small seating arrangements for groups of 3 or 4 parent-child pairs. While they munch, each child is encouraged to describe one way that he or she practiced the skill from the previous lesson in the group. Group leaders circulate around the room to ensure that each child participates in this part of the program. We require parents to accompany their child to class and stay with the child for the entire session. One reason for parent presence is that it helps to keep kids focused, on task, and engaged. It also helps parents learn what we are teaching so they can continue to practice and reinforce lessons at home. Next, the day's lesson is presented. These are brief presentations, and each child is given a worksheet to follow along with their parent. The group leaders demonstrate the skills described and then guide parents and kids in the practice exercises. Because children with ADHD will quickly tune out if the leader is boring, it is important to remember that lessons have to be presented in ways that are lively and engaging. The group leaders need to find ways to make the lessons interesting and fun while getting across the benefits of trying out the new skill. Kids with ADHD are built to tune out the uninteresting, unimportant, and non-fun aspects of life. Following the guided practice time, there is a group competition in which some aspect of the day's lesson is developed into a game in which parent-child pairs compete with each other for a prize: cash, tickets to a movie, gift cards for bowling, passes to the zoo, nearby science center, etc. Finally, we review the homework for the coming week, discuss ways to inspire kids to practice, and make sure that kids are paired with others for home practice, and end the meeting. How you can teach life skills using this book. If you are not planning on teaching your child these life skills in a group, then I'd recommend that you set up a time each week for teaching and practice. Usually, there's more time on the weekend than during the week. If you anchor the time around a meal, you can begin with eating and then shift into a conversation about the life skill that you'd like your child to practice and learn in the coming week. If you have other children, you'll probably find that they will want to join, and it's often worthwhile to include them to help practice the lessons being taught. You'll also discover that it's helpful to set up goals for your other children to accomplish each week, even if they don't have ADHD. This way, your child with ADHD doesn't feel like he or she is the only one in the family who needs to work at getting better. Kids also like it when their parents share some of their goals for the week so that they can learn from them how to set out and achieve a personal goal. From my perspective, the best resource to learn about the scientific research on ADHD or on any topic is to search on PubMed. This online library was developed and is maintained by the National Institutes of Health and gives you access to more than 23 million scientific studies. PubMed can be found online at www.ncbi.nlm.nih.gov/PubMed. Just type in the keywords about the topic that you want to learn more about, and you're on your way to a world of information. Teaching life skills to children and teens with ADHD was written so that you could teach the lessons we've learned at my clinic, in your home and your community. Although a parent, grandparent, or other guardian and a child could use this book alone, I encourage you to pair up with other parents who have a child with ADHD to get the most out of this experience. Counselors, mental health providers, or local ADHD support groups, e.g., Children and Adults with ADHD, CHADD.org, can use the information contained in this book to establish life skills groups in their schools, clinics, and practices. By teaming up with others, you will be able to establish a group of friends for your child. Such social networks will become crucial as children proceed through the middle school and high school years. As you read, you'll find that many chapters contain checklists, worksheets, or both. I included these as tools for reflection, teaching, and engaging children and teens in learning life skills. Some of them take the form of quizzes. Others are more like a guided journal entry. They're designed to help your children, or the kids in your life skills group, develop new habits and patterns of behavior that will make them more successful in life, both during their school years and when they hit adulthood. If you are working with a group, you might want to download and photocopy some of the worksheets. To do this, go to pubs.apa.org/books/sup/Monastra teaching. The worksheets are not for commercial use. If you would like to repost or use the worksheets in any format, please obtain written permission from APA's Permission Office or where indicated on the worksheet, from me at the FPI Attention Disorders Clinic.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?